Listen, man. Listen, man. Listen, man. Listen. We talking practice.
Hey, Matthew Harvey here with the 12 o'clock siren on the southeast corner of the Leonard downtown square. On my left is James Hardley.
Hello, everybody, and on my left is Jason Fuller.
How are you?
I'm well. How about yourself?
I'm doing well.
Yeah.
Welcome, fellas.
I'll be honest, I feel like these week-long between episodes, I feel like we're always coming back from like some vacation or something. It's kind of
Yeah,
weird.
I feel
like rusty, kind
I'm
of.
more excited on podcast days.
Oh, yeah.
I just had to ask, what was our last episode? I didn't. It was Gay Duel and the toy drive.
It was. We also talked about that on at the chamber lunch on Tuesday.
That's right.
Miss Ashley too.
I was there. You were
Ashley
there,
was there.
Jason. We missed you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to make that. I was hoping I would get off early that day, and I did not.
Yeah, it's weekday at noon.
I'm going to make one of them.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
You know who else was there?
Well, Pastor Joe was there, and he is here now. So, welcome, Pastor Joe.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Yeah. Pastor Joe is our resident Methodist pastor here. I'm a member of that church along with my wife, Ashley, and our two kiddos, Wyatt and Walker. And so we got Pastor Joe to come on and talk about some of his background and some of the things the Methodist Church is doing today and kind of the state of the church. Think you can handle that, Pastor Joe?
Let's give it a shot.
Welcome to the siren.
Hey, thanks, Matthew.
Yeah. So first, if you would, tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, the standard.
Okay, sure. Standard stuff. Yeah. I began as a small child in East Dallas. Now, I'm
we
a native,
mostly do.
Me too.
Yeah.
Usually. I'm a native Dallasite and grew up in East Dallas in the Lakewood area and was a Methodist early on.
Sure.
And when my parents moved to the suburbs, when my father graduated from school and got his first teaching job, bought his first house in Mesquite, then we looked for a church a little bit closer to where we were there. Left my childhood church, sure. And my stepmother was raised Southern Baptist, so we looked at Methodist churches, Baptist churches, and we joined a Southern Baptist church in Mesquite, and where I spent the next 9 years. So all my formative years, I was Southern Baptist. So and then when I came back from the Navy, I actually went back to the church where I was a child, and it was like coming back home. It's because all these folks that I remembered as a child were still there, and it's like a sanctuary full of grandparents, and they just were
familiar.
Back. Yeah, very familiar, and it was home, and so I started coming back to the Methodist Church and became active there. So Methodist by choice, but I refer to myself as a recovering Southern Baptist.
So what? How long were you in the Navy?
3 years, 11 months, and 29 days.
Oh, right. Yeah. So what took you to the Navy?
Everybody counts their days.
Yeah, exactly. They do.
Especially those last 29 days.
and as it happened, my actual out date, which would have been the full 4 years, of course, would have been on a Sunday. They don't discharge you on a Sunday, so I got 2 extra days to myself.
Hey, take it where you can from the government.
Right. I'll take those 2 days, and I did. I ran down the pier and came back to Texas.
That's it.
The question, what took me into the Navy, when I graduated from high school in '72, and Vietnam, of course, was still going on then, and very real possibility that I was looking at being drafted even then. The draft was still active, and so I had to really give some consideration of what are the main basic survival needs that I had. What would I need just to make sure that I got by without going crazy in 4 years in the military, whichever branch.
Sure.
And it came down to, I could put up with almost anything if I have at least one hot meal a day and a dry place to sleep.
Yeah.
And that wasn't going to be in country. It was going to be at sea.
Yeah.
I was assured, unless something really bad happened, I would have a dry place to sleep every night on board ship.
Or a very wet one.
Ironing.
One or the other.
That's right, exactly. And at that point, I'm not sleeping anyway.
That's right.
So I joined the Navy. But I had 2 or 3 uncles that were in the Navy, and
It's a little family heritage there.
Yeah, it was. So I was kind of continuing that on too.
So how old were you when you joined?
Pardon?
How old were you when you joined?
Joined when I was 17.
Gotcha. Shipped to basic and
Yeah,
18?
I went early entry program, so I went the summer before I became 18, and at that time there was this big promotion push about for the Navy that was called the Cowboy Company.
Okay.
The Dallas Cowboys. They were linked to the Dallas Cowboys, and they had a company for each of the 3 boot camps. At that time, we had 3: one in Great Lakes, one in Orlando, and one in San Diego. For the Navy, and they had a company going to each one of them, and they recruited from basically the 5-state area around Texas.
Sure.
Supposed to be all Texas guys. They weren't. They were Oklahoma. There was Arkansas, New Mexico,
Tola,
Louisiana.
right?
Yeah. And so I went in under that program, and it was delayed entry because we were going to be officially inducted into the Navy at the Dallas Cowboys San Francisco 49ers game on Thanksgiving Day.
Oh man.
So I unofficially became a reservist in like July, which put me 5-6 months ahead of all the other guys taking a test and all those things. And so I would reach rank. I would be promoted before others.
Nice.
So, and that was one of the
That was
benefits.
nifty.
That was,
Yeah.
yeah, it really was, and all the way through my 4 years. And then, but anyway, we were part of that weird thing that was the Cowboy Company, and the then Department of Defense Secretary Melvin R. Laird came to the game, and they marched us all out onto the field at halftime, all 3 companies, and he swore us in. Of course, we were already actually sworn in.
Sure.
It was a big show thing. But each of the companies was given a Texas flag and a Dallas Cowboy flag to take with them through boot camp.
That's cool.
It was you'd think so.
Well, yeah. You don't want to
so.
stick out too much in boot camp.
No, and it made us targets the whole time. There was, and I went to San Diego, and while we were there was also a company of Saudi Arabian sailors that were going through boot camp, our training and all.
Right.
We were hated more than the Saudis because we were Dallas Cowboys, especially being California.
Of course.
And so it's like, everybody was, oh man, we'd march by and everybody was cussing at us and stuff. And it really, they really knew who we were. But the flags, the Dallas Cowboy flags were presented, that were presented to each of the companies, were presented by the wives of POWs.
Oh wow!
And the lady who presented my company our flag was the mother of one of my best friends in high school.
Oh wow!
And we were following him all the way. He went to MIA at what was called the Parrot's Beak offensive into Cambodia.
Gotcha.
And so it was around 69 or 70, I think. And so our whole time in high school.
Was that by chance?
What's that?
Was that by chance?
He went missing in action.
Yeah, we went missing in action.
No. That she presented to you
Just by chance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. She had no idea I was in the company. I had no idea until I looked up. It's Sissy.
Yeah.
It was just. Okay. So it's one of those things you think this is going to be okay.
Yeah.
So it was just one of those neat things. Well, so anyway, went boot camp and then signalman A school. I was a signalman.
Do you remember if the Cowboys won that game or not?
They lost.
Oh, that
made
does
it
not
even
set
worse.
the good tone
Sorry,
for
what-
your enlistment.
Staubach did not.
Sorry, what
through
year
for
was
us.
that?
72.
72.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanksgiving 72.
So you were a signalman. Is that
Signalman.
basically a commo guy, radio or something?
No, visual communications. Strictly,
Really?
yeah. It's the
In
second oldest.
1972, huh?
Yeah. Flag hoist, semaphore, flashing light, all visual communication, and it's the second oldest rating in the Navy besides quartermaster.
Oh, wow.
So, most of us make quartermaster and signalman. Yeah, they were
Gotcha.
all connected. Yeah.
Happy Veterans Day.
Yeah, thank you
most
very much.
recently.
Yeah, thank you.
So after that, were you stationed on a ship or?
Yeah.
They don't really do it like that anymore, I don't think.
Well, it's
don't know
depending
much about the
depending
Navy,
on the scores you get, and your aptitude tests, and all that during boot camp. They kind of filter through to say, okay, you're going straight to the fleet as a boatswain, or and then you can usually go to another rating if you've got some aptitude. Well, you can put in for radioman or electronics tech or something like that.
Sure.
From the deck division. And a deck division is basically doing all the, you're doing the painting and spray painting.
Yeah.
You're doing all the grunt work.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. No special training.
Called it weeds and seeds in the Air Force.
Weeds and seeds. Yeah, exactly.
Out there picking up cigarette butts.
That's
and
right.
whatnot.
That's right. Yeah. If it doesn't move, paint it. If it moves, salute it. And I was sent to Signalman A School, so I stayed in San Diego for another, I guess it was 6 weeks or something, and where they attempted to teach us Morse code and those kind of things. And it's a whole different language, and it's different because it's a different part of your brain, I guess. It's different learning Morse code visually than you do by sound. So radiomen, they're just seeing blinking lights,
Right.
but they can hear Morse code and know exactly.
Yeah.
You know,
And vice versa, I'm
vice
guessing.
versa. I had no idea. It's just noise to me.
Were
It's
y'all
just white noise?
Out there at Navy North Island, or
No. No, it was at that time, and I don't think the bases. There's a whole lot of changes since I was in the
sure.
Navy. I didn't serve with John Paul Jones, but I saw him go by. It was called 32nd Street,
Yeah.
and that's where they had some of the A schools there. The Signalman A School is one of those, but that's also where they
32nd Street still
had the
there.
Frogs. They had UDT
Right.
training there too. So
Sure.
as I was walking my way up with my breakfast sandwich to class, the guys who were training for dive school
Yeah.
were going up and down,
Carrying logs
running
and
up
stuff.
and down, yeah, carrying their tanks and stuff up and
Yeah.
down for like it's a 3 mile run
Sure.
with your tanks, that kind of thing.
They're a
Have
different
fun,
breed.
Have fun, guys.
Yeah.
See ya.
This breakfast sandwich sure tastes good. This warm
Love
cup
this
of
ham, egg,
coffee.
and
12-ounce
cheese. That's
sandwich.
right. Love this hex sandwich.
I've
That's right.
only been to San Diego one time, and within about 20 minutes of landing, I went, I could live here.
Yeah.
I was still
Saw
in the
a
airport.
picture of it once. I was like, yeah, I can
Yeah,
live there.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a really nice town.
We went out to Coronado. We were on Navy
Yeah,
North for a
Coronado,
while. Then we
yeah.
went to the amphib base where the SEALs are and did some training and stuff. It was a really cool experience.
Yeah.
It's the only time I've ever been out there.
Yeah.
So you did your 4 years.
Did my 4 years.
Now-
yeah. Westpac, West Coast sailor.
Sure.
One
Now-
ship the whole time.
Did you were you always turned towards ministry? And this was just kind of a
Ooh, not even close.
really.
No. When I was my last year, I started looking at school and that sort of thing. And my last year in the Navy, what am I going to do with myself when I get out of here?
Sure.
And I thought merchant marines. No, that didn't. I don't think I want to do that because a lot of the ratings your skills that you learn in the military, as you know, James, can be transferred into civilian life.
Sure.
And they give you these job titles of, okay, here's what you're doing in the Navy. Here's what you would be doing in civilian life with the skills that we've taught you. It would be flagman on the railroad.
Yeah.
It's kind of, really? That's it? So, and there really wasn't anything that it didn't cross over.
So that's
None of
kind of
those-
funny.
None of those skills crossed over.
That's-
So I had to start looking for schools. I thought, what is it that interests me? And I looked at all kinds of things. I looked at Stephen F. Austin and some other schools about what's the word I'm looking for? Park
ranger.
ranger, park
Recreational?
warden, that kind of thing. Yeah, recreational things. Yeah, and so anyway, I really hadn't decided, but I knew I was going to go to school when I got out. So I went to Eastfield Community College in part of the Dallas Community College district.
Stayed
Dallas
in
County.
Dallas area.
Yeah. Yeah,
Around-
my parents
around
were still
hometown.
there. Went back home and get myself settled in and attended classes at Eastville and found out that I really enjoyed the phys ed stuff.
Yeah.
And took every class they had. I mean everything. And I took a student job in the PE department, and I was working at athletic directing and working with the athletic director and people on staff there, and got to know them real well. And they gave me a recommendation to be a staff person at the last campus that was being opened. That was about 77, which was Brookhaven College
Right.
in Addison. And so I was the very first equipment manager and support staff that they had there. And was loving it. I mean, I was helping to teach the tennis classes. I was the coach for the women's softball club and volleyball, and helping out with the basketball and athletic training and taking scoring. So I was if the doors were open to the school and I was usually the one opening them, I was there.
You
I
were
was just
21,
completely-
22 at this time?
Yeah, 22, 23. Yeah, and just really loving every minute of it. But it didn't pay anything. I was getting nothing. I mean, it was poverty. Loving what I was doing, just not getting paid for it. So,
Poverty's not fun.
Yeah. No, not at all. But so I didn't go that route. I decided not to go athletic training and that sort of thing, and kind of bounced around at other jobs and things, and worked for a friend who was actually a basketball coach for Brookhaven at the time, who had his own business making KD furniture, knockdown furniture, assembly, and worked with him for a while and did some other things, and went back to school for a while when I was thinking I was still going to go athletic training, and took some of the science course, anatomy, physiology, and kinesiology, and things like that.
Sure.
And one thing that I learned was that when I got out of the service anyway, how much I really enjoyed school.
Sure.
I was a real strong, mediocre student in high school. I was a solid
medium.
middle six. Yeah, just enough to get by, and just really didn't enjoy much of it. But found out that I really did enjoy school, and that I could excel at it. Kind of on my own pace, and being challenged and everything. And so I knew I could do that.
Sure.
I knew I could do college work, but still didn't have a direction. So anyway, found like I said, came back after visiting a few churches around town. So I'm going to go back to my childhood church, Lakewood,
Sure.
Lakewood United Methodist, and joined there, and really didn't start hearing a call into ministry there. But later, when I moved to Lancaster, joined the church, the First Methodist Lancaster,
Sure.
and the pastor there, great old guy. His name was Bordon Smith, and everybody loved him to death. He was like everybody's grandfather, and he had been there 10 years, which was at that time real unusual for the Methodist Church, because we're appointed usually for 2 or 3 years at a time. For a pastor to be at a church for 10 years in the Methodist Church, real unusual. And they, everybody loved him, but they had a dormant youth group at the time. And they had not had a youth director for about 5 years, really didn't have anything organized. And he says, and my parents, when I was growing up at Lakewood, were youth sponsors. And
Very active.
Very active. Yeah. And when I was like 5 and 6, I was the puppy that went along with everything the youth group did. I was there.
Kind of sounds like you and when the Keegans and stuff were.
Yeah, I was just thinking, you were reminding me of the Keegans
right.
at your very church.
Yeah.
Many years ago.
Yeah. And it was basically the same time all that was happening.
Yeah,
so I was the mascot, and which was great for me, because I had like 35 older brothers and sisters that were youth group members, and I wanted to be just like them. But never occurred to me that I would ever be even a volunteer in a youth group. But the pastor at Lancaster came up to me and says, would you like to work with our youth? We need somebody to work with the youth. And I said, no, I know what that entails. I know what's involved with that. I really don't think I want to do that. And so I became the volunteer for that. And
funny how that happens.
Yeah, that's kind of how it happens. And from that, it grew into I'd never been around any other youth directors or anything, and then became acquainted with other youth directors, both part-time and full-time, and those that were working their way through seminary, and and working as youth directors in churches and things. They became my mentors, and I realized not only can you actually make a living doing this, never occurred to me you could be paid as a youth director in the church, but I'm being called to this, and so I started developing skills and getting some courses and things, and getting some experience there. And the church there, the congregation at Lancaster, were really supportive. Bless their hearts, they had to put up with my first 2 or 3 sermons. It was, whoa, that was rough. That was rough for all of us, but they did. They loved me through that. And so kind of went from there, and 17 years in youth ministry. My wife, Kathy, kind of joined me in that. We met each other in Longview, and when I became a youth director for First Church in Longview, the downtown church.
Kathy joined us tonight too.
Yeah,
She's here with us.
Kathy's over here. Hi, Kathy. And
howdy.
She was a teacher, a special ed teacher in Longview, and real active in the church and their singles ministry, and she had was also working in there as a youth sponsor at the church for junior highs, and she was one of the people that interviewed me for the job at Longview, And
Sounds like a conflict of interest. I'm not gonna lie.
not yet,
Not yet, huh?
No, didn't know. No, and that's part of the story. Is that was a really rough Sunday because I drove into Longview and stayed overnight with the associate pastor and his wife. And they took me to dinner, and the next day, I had a private interview with the senior pastor. I had an interview with the staff parish relations committee. They're the ones who really do the yes, no, hiring, firing. But I also had an interview with the youth council, which is composed of youth and the adult sponsors. And
Sure.
Kathy was one of those. And of all those three, man, they put me through the ringer. 3 interviews in one day. That's tough.
That is.
Yeah, go do that sometime. Of all the people that interviewed me, including the senior pastor, Kathy was the one that asked any relevant questions that were of any worth at all. And I made a mental note. I want to keep her on if I get this job, I definitely want to keep her on the staff. She is a sharp lady.
Well, you went above and beyond there.
Yeah.
Little did you know she was interviewing you for something totally different.
That's kind of you kind of think that. And but I did take the job, and 5.5 months later we were married. So there's your conflict. Not really conflict of interest.
What hours are you available? Will you marry me?
Yeah, would you marry
Willing
me?
to work weekends? Are you single?
Well, yeah, and part of her story is I never signed up to be a pastor's wife, and so we've. But man, she's always been there, and she's always been a part of my ministry, even youth ministry. So I was in youth ministry total about 17 years.
Oh wow!
And then became what's called a local pastor when we were serving Waples Memorial.
Is that similar to I'm really asking, is that similar to like a lay pastor? Or I've heard the term lay pastor. I don't really know what that means.
It's different than a lay pastor in that a local pastor is appointed by the bishop. We have a system where we have an episcopi group level, and then they appoint all the pastors, ordained clergy or local pastors to the churches that need somebody to be there as the pastor. And the main difference between a local pastor and ordained elder in the Methodist Church is that local pastor does everything everything the ordained pastor does, the ordained clergy does, except only at the local level. So they're kind of constrained to the local community.
Right.
I couldn't go to Michigan and marry someone or baptize someone there. I can in Leonard, Texas.
Gotcha.
That kind of thing, or wherever I'm appointed. And so it's localized, and that's how they get the name local pastor. Your ministry is local. It's kind of simple.
Cool. Yeah. Not just a clever name.
Yeah, exactly. But we are appointed,
sure,
just like elders, and we have the same call and the same authority and the same responsibilities as an elder.
Sure.
Of this church. Yeah.
You said 3 to 4 years is typically what you.
The Methodist Church. Historically, at least in this area, we would have bishops that would just come around and say, okay, nobody has a guaranteed appointment. You're all going to change every 2-3 years. That's not the way to make friends.
Right.
But
why is that the way that it is?
The idea is that you stay fresh and you don't get complacent.
Sure.
Basically, that's it. However, what they've learned is that when you keep popping people around, you don't build a relationship.
That's right.
Yep.
So it really inhibits ministry. And conversely, what they've learned is that churches grow with a continuity of ministry and elders and clergy leadership.
There's a familiarity there. There's trust there.
Absolutely, yeah. And other denominations learned that long before we did. And so instead of a 2 or 3 years and you jump around and you're moved from church to church or whatever, bishops have let people stay longer. And I'll give you a good example. Christ Church Plano, their pastor is about to retire next year, and that'll be his 32nd year there.
Oh, wow.
And he kind of broke the mold.
Sure.
But they've seen that church of, 7,000 members do amazing things
sure.
with that with that continuity.
If it's not broke, don't fix it kind of
exactly.
thing.
So that's not the oddity now. That's becoming the norm of that continuity. 10, 15 years, that kind of thing.
If you could you explain? I'm guessing you say bishops assign kind of. So is there some kind of criteria in which they monitor what they feel like is
like the metrics?
If it's moving in the right direction.
How do they
what kind of criteria
decision?
do they use for that?
There's really three sources of information that come before the bishop and the bishop's cabinet. The bishop didn't make that a unilateral kind of decision. He has a cabinet of people that assist him with that,
Sure.
just like a president in the cabinet.
Sure.
And so they once a year, starting in January through April, late April is what we call the appointment season. And so starting in January, they start looking at every church in the conference and every pastor in the conference and do an evaluation. And they draw in information from the pastor themselves and from the congregation, and then from the person who is the pastor's, basically the most immediate supervisor, which is called a district superintendent. And so you have all this input coming in, and they evaluate. Okay, Joe's, and you basically have three choices that you can offer, or three suggestions or three requests as a pastor or as a church. As a congregation, they can tell the bishop and the cabinet, we love Joe. We really want to keep him here another year. Please, see if you can make that happen. Joe's a real stinker. Get him out of here as soon as possible.
Starting fist fights.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, out in the parking lot. Yeah, that kind of thing. Or if Joe has gifts and graces that have been wonderful here, but if you need Joe someplace else, we understand that.
Sure.
Those are your three choices.
That's right.
And it's same for me. Oh, I absolutely love it here. If at all possible, I'll continue my ministry here. That'd be great. Or get me away from these people as soon as possible.
They're starting fights in the parking lot.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about these. I don't understand this. Or if you need me someplace else, I'm open to that. Kathy and I will be glad to do that. So, and so they make those evaluations. And with local pastors, they usually keep us longer. They don't usually. Well, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Sure.
So we usually are no, Joe and Leonard are good. That's a good mix. Let's keep them there. Nothing needs to change there. So,
Very good.
So
I hope you like it here in Leonard.
oh, we do. Yeah.
That's good. So with your time as a local pastor, what does it take to make the next step? Do you go to seminary, or is that a require?
It's not required, and a lot do.
Sure.
Some of us decide to stay local pastor, and that's been my decision. That's where I've been called, and that's
right.
But it's also being a local pastor is also a step towards seminary if you choose to.
Gotcha.
To become a pastor in the Methodist Church, you have two routes, two paths, and
right.
Either seminary or local pastor.
Sure.
And again, historically in the Methodist Church, local pastors have been the backbone of ministry and the bulk of the number of pastors available.
The enlisted. The enlisted.
Since the 1700s. Yeah, you come straight out of the laity. And the local pastors have kept things going, because in the early days, you'd have circuit riders who would have such a large geographic area. So there were so few pastors that they would ride circuits that would take 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks to complete and come back around. Right. So if you have 6 or 8 or 12 churches, you can only visit them once a week, and you move on to the next one for the next week or 2 weeks, because you're traveling by either foot, horse, or carriage in those days. It takes you a long time to make that circuit. Somebody's got to keep things going and make things grow while the pastor's not there. That became the local pastor. So they would keep things organized. They would evangelize, and they would build basically Sunday school classes and that sort of thing, and Bible study, and maintain the services, the worship services, when the elder wasn't there. So the local pastor, and there's still more local pastors than there are elders.
Gotcha.
And over the whole denomination, not necessarily our conference, but over the whole denomination.
And you were over in Aubrey right before you came here to Leonard, huh?
Yeah. Kathy and I served 9 years in Aubrey,
oh, wow.
and just north of Denton, and a great little church there, a little congregation, and that was 9 years of being part-time. That was the only time I've been part-time as a local pastor.
Gotcha.
But Aubrey couldn't afford full-time appointment, and I said, yeah, I'll be glad to. Let's see how this works out. And so we were there for 9 years, and God really blessed us there.
Well, I bet they can afford it now, as that place is growing up.
It's changed a lot in that area.
The developers have discovered.
Yeah.
Aubrey.
I went to 2008 or 9, I can't remember now. I went to the Fire Academy in Aubrey, and it was just a little bitty town. It's not that way anymore.
No, and interesting transition because 100 years ago and 50 years ago and 40 years ago, it was all peanut farmers.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a huge area for peanut. And then about 30 or 25 years ago, the old timers, started
Horse
dying
country.
off. It became horse country because the next generation didn't want to farm peanuts.
Oh,
They were
blame 'em.
tired of that. Yeah, that was something Dad did or Granddad did, and so they started selling off all the family property to people from Houston and Dallas. Thought, oh, wouldn't it be fun to raise quarter horses? And they found out they can't make any money at that now, and they're selling out, and they're selling it to developers. So,
Yeah, well, this generation has got the best end of that stick because they're making more money than anybody.
Yeah.
So
It's developer.
Well, moving on to so now you're here in Leonard.
Yeah.
And let's talk about some of the things that the Methodist Church does. We talk about when we were at the chamber lunch, and again we missed Jason there, but we were talking about our upcoming event that's going to kind of focus on the toy drive for local children. But the Methodist does a lot here to feed people. And can you talk to some of that and what the programs are?
Yeah, we have several ministries that benefit the community at large, and one of those in a long time ministry that they've had 10, 12 years at least is we call Backpack for Life, and that's a program that supplements the school lunches whenever school's not in session. I mean, over holidays, over
Weekends.
the summer, we provide lunches, sandwich and things, fruit, chips, and they come up and they pick the sandwich. I'd like a turkey sandwich, and I'd like those chips. I'd like an orange, please.
Sure.
And so it's a sack lunch kind of thing. And they've been doing that, like I said, a long time, and we're continuing to do that. And once a month, we provide a pancake breakfast at the church in Fellowship Hall for any of the kids that want to come.
Sure.
Just come and enjoy. And then there's some crafts that they can do and some things that they kind of do together.
Right.
And well, we also inherited the food pantry when LEAP dissolved and handed off the clothes closet and the food pantry. They were looking for places for churches that could take those up, and Valley Creek Baptist took the clothes closet, and our church inherited the food pantry.
Sure.
So we have that on our campus. And it's open the third Monday of every month from 10 to noon for anybody who needs any kind of food assistance. And so we've had a lot of contributions from Garnet Construction and the schools provided with the food drive that they've done. And there's a ladies' Sunday school class at First Baptist that every month they're bringing canned food over to us, and Grove Hill United Methodist has gotten on board with that, and so we have a lot of support that way, and with funding too, because we don't have the space or the capability right now to have any fresh fruit or produce or dairy or anything like that, any of the perishables. Canned foods and things, we're in good shape, but we hope to be able to grow into a larger space. So we're really kind of looking for a space here in town, close into town, that would be accessible for folks to so that we can expand and have freezer space and refrigerator space, and then we can partner up with the North Texas Food Bank and grow even more and be able to help even more clients than we're helping now. Right now, it's somewhere between 20 and 25 households. And
But there's more than that out there.
We know there is. Yeah, that's not even 1% of the community.
We have a family friend that lives over in Frisco, and she, Marion Schultz is her name. She, I think they actually go to Grace Methodist over in Frisco.
Yeah,
I'm not
Grace
sure.
Avenue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Grace Avenue. And
Which
anyway,
is not on Grace Avenue, by the way. But
I know. It's on Main Street.
That's on Main Street.
Main and Teal or whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
So she just got one day she found out that, you think Frisco is very affluent, and turns out there's a lot of hungry kids in Frisco.
Absolutely.
Or there were.
Yeah.
She started a thing called Frisco Fast Packs, and basically over the course of about 18 months or 2 years, eradicated child hunger in Frisco.
Wow.
And so when Ashley and I moved back from that area here, we kind of wanted to kind of model that, and we're still trying to find ways to do that, right?
Right, right.
And that's why we here at the Siren we want to help. Just hunger bothers me, and especially with kids, they're put in
Shouldn't be a reason
situations.
for that.
It shouldn't not in this day of
abundance.
That's
Right.
that's the word.
If somebody's hungry, we should be able to help them as a community.
Right.
Absolutely.
So
That's
we
why
got to
we have the
figure
food
out
pantry.
we got to break the code on how to get these people, how to reach them. So,
Right.
but we'll get there.
Right. Absolutely.
Let's see, what was I going to say though? I lost my train of thought. Got me now. I'm.
Or you
hungry,
asking
though.
about feeding? Yeah, ministries that the church is
Yeah.
involved with feeding folks. And
What
things like
about missionaries? Do we have any missionaries out there right now?
that. We don't have. Well, in the Methodist Church, the denomination sends missionaries. It's not like the congregations themselves send missionaries,
Gotcha.
as you would in the Baptist church or a congregational
Sure.
church, where you sponsor an individual or a family and send them someplace as
Sure.
missionaries. So yeah, there's I think the last count was like 153 missionaries that are still in the field all
Oh, wow.
around the world as Methodists that we as a denomination support.
Gotcha.
We're connected with every other Methodist church in the world, and it's called a connectional system. And through that kind of a system, you've got a little bit of money from Leonard, you got a little bit of money from Aubrey, you got a little bit of money from Grace Avenue, and together, because of that connection,
Sure.
we're able to really make an impact. We wouldn't be able to do
on
this
that
as just one
note-
congregation.
On that note, the connectivity between churches, is there, I was wanting to ask where your sermons come from. What's the genesis behind it? Whether it's a
Kathy's laughing over
passage,
there.
Yeah, Kathy's
What-
giggling. Yeah.
whether it's a passage, an idea, something that you want to convey. Is it a network that you're like, hey, this is a hot topic, hot button topic. This.
Yeah.
Where's it come from?
On occasion, if there's been a special event that's happened, a disaster or catastrophe or something, then I may key
Revolve
in on
around
that,
that.
and speak to that and use passages that can speak to that and to give people comfort or support or encouragement or courage in those kind of rough times, and have had to do that in the past in places, but in the Methodist Church, pastors can they can choose their own passages. There's no set design or plan per se, but there's also something called the lectionary, and in the lectionary there's a 3-year cycle of passages, and there's every Sunday there have been there's some nebulous group, a committee have come together, actually from different denominations, come together and say, on this Sunday, let's choose these passages because they speak all together about one topic or one subject, and from the Old Testament and from Psalms and from the New Testament and from the epistles. So you have a possible, any given Sunday, 4 passages that you can pull from if you're using the lectionary, and so I usually use those. I usually use the lectionary because for me that always challenges me every week, rather than me falling back on my 16 favorite verses and preaching about those again.
You have to actually dig into those things and
Exactly.
Challenge
yourself
academically.
something
keeps
around
me
it.
challenged and keeps me learning about things that, and even though, and like I said, it's a 3-year cycle. So every 3 years, you're going to come up with on a particular Sunday the Beatitudes. Well,
in 3 years you may have a different delivery on that.
The church is in a different place,
Mhm.
so the message is different for them at that time. What God is providing me by reading that, I learn something different. There's a different message. I can't.
Can you give us some examples?
Well, yeah. Let me give you the parable that's called the prodigal son. Okay, the the parable of two brothers. Okay, we know about the prodigal son, and he goes off to another country, and woohoo, lives it up, and comes and goes, wow, I am really in trouble. If I go back to my father and say, would you just hire me as just treat me like one of your servants? I am not worthy of being your son anymore. And dad's waiting for every day, looks out on the road and waits for his son to come back, and the day comes, and he rushes out and meets his son on the road and embraces him. We're having a party. My son that was dead is alive again. That kind of thing. Okay, we know that story. I don't know how many times I've had the opportunity to preach that parable. It's different every time. Sometimes it's, we need to take a look at it from the viewpoint of the brother who's always been reliable, the trustworthy brother who has resentment. We need to look at it from the father's point of view. We need to look at it from the servant's point of view. We need to look at it usually from the prodigal son's point of view. But there's always a different way to present it, always a different word that God has for us. Just using that one parable, there's just an infinite number of ways to present the word, because God has a different message almost every time. And like I just said, wherever the church is at that time, there's a need to hear a certain word. So. Sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think even prior to moving here, we were a member at the Village Church under Matt Chandler, and great charismatic, very I don't know what the word, charismatic probably, I guess.
Strong personality. Very strong personality.
Yeah. He, over the years, his maturity and growth changed. They actually a few years ago took every sermon off the podcast like prior to 2007, and he actually spoke to it, and he said, listen, there wasn't anything theologically wrong with it, but it was tonal. I was a lot more intense and didn't come across as loving as I'd like to, so we're just going to take those away. I know that's not what I want.
He's more comfortable with his delivery now than...
Absolutely. And he was he came from as many folk do, he came from a place of rebellion, and I think when he flipped the switch and became a pastor, he was so on fire about it. His just delivery was hard sometimes.
Sure. Speaking of which, I just deleted the first 4 episodes.
Oh man,
of the
because of that.
Oh yeah, I wasn't very good on those. I wasn't very good on those. So.
I'm just so embarrassed.
Okay podcast or preaching, the more you do, the better you get.
Right.
Please don't compare us to you. Please don't do that. That's a lot of pressure. I do have a question. Now that you've been in Leonard a little while. If you could give us some traits, if you will, that you're seeing in the congregation that you have now.
Wow. Okay. Good question, Jason. Traits.
Collectively.
A real burn to meet the needs of the people in the community.
That's a positive
They're
thing.
very attentive to being watchful of that and to be ready to respond to needs. And certainly, not too long ago, there was a father and his son, and they lived in Celeste. Their house burned down, and the call was put out. Anybody got some clothes? Man, we had more clothes than 16 people could wear in a year's time. Boom, like that. The people are responsive, and because they know what it is to be in need. They know what it is to be in a situation that you're out of control and that God can be a part of, and so they want to be in the hands and feet of Christ. So there you go.
Awesome.
Wow.
Cool.
Very neat.
So before we wrap this up, let's talk a little bit about the state of the church today, right?
Sure.
And I mean collectively, the church as in, everyone.
Well, I can't speak for the Pope. But.
Right, yeah.
That's all right. We have him next week.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Right.
He wanted me to convey to you he's going to be listening. So
yeah, Frank, good to see you.
No, so, I think even at Sunday school last, we were talking about the way maybe the message is sometimes being watered down, but I think it's the Sunday school message was, why is Christian life so hard? And it's funny because all the
your Sunday school teacher sitting right over here.
See, I'm trying to be the class.
She's got her hands up.
What am I trying to say here? The big stuff can be hard, of course, but it's a little bit more on the nose, so you understand what to stay away from. Yeah. But I think there's a lot of subtle ways that you can do right and wrong. And, talking about watering down the message to appeal to today's culture, I recognize the need to maybe strategically think about the way you say things so it more resonates. But that is a fine line between, let's not call sin, and,
Right.
So, I mean, are you seeing a problem with that, or do you think that's overblown, or?
No, I think that's one of the issues that and I'll speak to the United Methodist Church, that we as a denomination are dealing with, is how to present the gospel, and what are we saying the gospel is, and because we're dealing right now with a really tough issue of human sexuality,
Sure,
and the acceptance or the non-acceptance of homosexuals within the clergy and things like that. And so those are issues that our church is dealing with. Other denominations have dealt with it in various ways over the last 10, 15 years, and with varying results. We're catching up with that, and we're about to see what those results are going to be, I think, very shortly within the next year.
Well, let me ask you a question about that. I was having a discussion on that a couple of months ago with a friend of mine who happens to be gay, and we're very good friends, and he was a believer and is a believer, and he has his struggles, and I'm very hey, I'm not going to tell you, we can have a true conversation about what I believe and what you believe, but he said he didn't understand why it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And you're right, like it's not a big deal. We want to serve in the churches we grew up in, and blah blah blah. And I get it, I understand, right?
Yeah.
But I made the analogy of, I said, well, my wife and I, before we were married, we lived together, and the Bible's pretty clear on that.
Yeah.
And so should we be able to get a leadership position in the church living together prior to marriage, knowingly doing that? And I don't know if that's the right analogy, but he was kind of like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, it's kind of the same thing. Like, if it's all just love and we should just love everybody, but if we don't have some parameters, then what is it? Why do we even have the book?
I think there's blurred lines there with social stigmas versus what we're taught. Yeah,
it does.
Yeah, and I mean, I get it, but I guess I tend to be fairly socially liberal, but when it comes to theology, I take a pretty conservative road at it, because I think we've been given this divine book, and it says things, and you don't have to like it, really. It may kind of rub you wrong sometimes, like just your innate, I don't know, brokenness or whatever. It says, I don't like that, but it's a rule. I got to follow it. I didn't like my dad's curfew either, but it was loving.
Your opinion of the curfew didn't change the fact that it was a rule.
It was a rule,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I wish maybe it didn't have to be that way, but I can't see through that those
Getting
lenses.
into some hard-hitting stuff here, Joe.
I told you it wouldn't be. But,
This was not supposed to be an ambush.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. It's well, those are questions that people inside the church and outside of the church have about the Methodist Church right now. Where are we going? Where's that church going? What is it that they teach? What is it that they preach? I think it is multifaceted. This is an onion that has not been peeled back all the way yet. There are lots of layers to this, but one of those layers is the issue of sin. How do you define it, and who defines sin? Right. Well, Scripture defines sin.
Sure.
I kind of my attitude right now is, yes, God loves all of us as beloved creatures. We're all loved by God, and Jesus accepts us. But Jesus doesn't leave us the way we are when He meets us.
Right.
God, if Jesus is doing what Jesus is supposed to, we allow Him to do what He's supposed to do in our lives. He doesn't leave any of us changed. The issue is, some people feel there's no need for change in their lives, gay or straight. There are people on both sides of that spectrum. No, I don't need to be changed. I'm fine.
Right.
I'm fine.
That is a fundamentally
so
flawed
it comes
view.
down, you're back to what's the definition of sin?
Right. Well, I think we ended up saying, like, look, because they always throw this. So are you telling me I'm going to go to hell because I love this person? And I said, I'm not telling you anything. I don't know, but that issue notwithstanding, I still couldn't tell you that. It's not my place to. But I think if you are truly seeking God, right, with putting truth out there and truly trying to develop your relationship, then you're going to come to a conclusion, and it may be different than what you think it is.
Sure.
Maybe not. I don't know. I can't tell you. So that's just usually where we end up, like storming off now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because we want what we want.
Right.
And we don't necessarily want to hear what we
try
need to hear.
We try to justify everything.
Absolutely.
Oh, boy,
yeah. We are big rationales. We try to rationalize things. Yeah.
Any other any positives you're seeing in the church at large right now? Sometimes it seems to
sure.
get.
Yeah, I see the church still offering Christ to a world that needs to know God's love,
Right.
More so than ever.
Yeah, that's right, and that's for us in Leonard. That's not going to change.
Sure.
Whoever comes through those doors, whoever that we meet on the street, whoever we work with, it's my goal that our people within the congregation know exactly what they believe and offer that, and that is God's love.
Yep.
And so we're not going to water that down.
Sure.
Anyone who comes through, and like I said. When we meet Christ, we may come to him. All of us come to, and people of need of redemption. We are all people in the need to be redeemed. But God doesn't leave us the way we are when He meets us.
Sure.
So all of us, and that's part of the Wesleyan view of salvation, is that life is a journey toward spiritual perfection.
Sure.
And we aren't today the way we were yesterday or 15 years ago, and we won't be the same 10 years from now either.
Sure.
We will be different individuals, and the more we grow with God and in the company of the community, the faith of community of faith, we will grow together.
Sure.
And because that's what the church is that we are to support one another. The Christian church wasn't created to be an individual thing.
Right.
Well, it's just me. I'm the only one. I don't need everybody else. Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
If you're going to be a Christian, you need to be within a community of faith. You need to support one another and to support others in their faith and to grow together.
And to do that locally is very important. We found out when we were moving back here, we wanted to stay members at the village.
Yeah.
And they said, no, you're moving, away. You need to serve locally. And I mean, they were like, hey, we appreciate it, but go forth.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
like that.
And that's the way it was with my family too. That when we moved out of East Dallas into Mesquite, it was too far for us. We weren't in connection with it. We weren't connected to these folks any longer, just by distance.
Sure.
It was
You saw them on Sunday.
Use your
45
time
minute
more
drive.
wisely too.
Absolutely,
Right.
yeah. And so we found a place that was where I would be in school with the kids and that kind of thing, because that was completely different group of folks once we moved out of that community, and we found a faith community where we could be active and participate, and I could grow up in the church, and mom and dad could grow up in the church, and then my younger brother, I was the oldest, so when my little brother or sister came along, it was all that. It was a faith community that we helped raise all of us.
Sure.
So.
Sure.
Tell us about your hours up at the church. Wednesdays, Sundays. What?
Wonder why Kathy's laughing. I don't know what's
What
going on there.
times can we come listen to you?
Oh,
what times can
sure.
we find you there?
Yeah, we have one worship Sunday mornings, and that's at 10:15. 10:15 every Sunday morning, and as I like to say, that was the time that was set long before I came along. But I kind of enjoy the 10:15 service because that we puts us out 11:30, something 11:15, 11:30, somewhere in there. No real rush for time, and we usually beat the Baptist to lunch. So
Yeah,
it's a
there you go.
really good thing. Yeah.
Any Wednesday night Bible studies or
no,
Tuesday, Thursday?
Not every Wednesday night. Now, Wednesday nights for us is usually our meeting nights. We for this committee, that group, but there are seasonal Bible studies, and that usually happen on Monday nights. And our ladies group just completed one. There were like 25 women that were involved in that, and from other churches as well, not just our folks. All of our study groups are open to anybody in the community. You don't have to be a member of the church to participate in that. And then we had the same study that we had a group meeting at lunch on Tuesdays. It was the same exact study, but for people that didn't want to either drive at night in the dark or they just preferred a lunchtime. Same exact study, so that kind of went parallel together, and that, like I said, that just completed, and then we have a community group, a fellowship group that's called Keenagers on Wednesdays, every Wednesday. Boy, these people are faithful to this, and they love that time of fellowship. Again, open to anybody in the community. Teenagers, it makes a sort of reference to age, but it's more of whatever if you've got the time to be there, if your schedule allows you to be there from 10 to 1-ish. It started out being 10 to noon on Wednesdays, and they just kept going, and they play Mexican Train and 42, things like that, and they love it.
They should come up here.
Good place to eat. There's lots to eat. These folks make, and they bring up all kinds of. I have to stay out of there because I'll just gain weight just standing around and watching them.
We should have those folks come up on the 30th and play some dominoes.
Yeah,
they love it.
So.
They do, and so that there's always a chair open at the tables for anybody.
Yeah, they're sharks though.
Yeah, there's some folks. There's one lady that stayed awake one night, and her background is being a mathematician. Really, really sharp lady, and she said she figured out an algorithm in her head that where she could beat everybody else.
Oh my gosh,
playing dominoes. So, but I don't know if she actually uses it or not. But that's just kind of one of those mental games she likes to do, But great bunch of folks, and again, it's open to anybody in the community, and we really wanted that to be a place where people could get out of the heat in the summer, and enjoy some time together with other people, and the same thing in the winter. Rather than spend all winter just in the house by yourself,
cooped up, right?
Come up and have some fun with folks.
Sure.
Meet new friends, and it's really grown into a really neat ministry.
Awesome,
cool.
Well, we have a few questions for you that we ask everybody.
This is a section of the show called Five Questions.
We call these random, but we kind of sift through them and see. And you may get some that a lot of other folks have got.
25 copies of the same 5 questions.
I've got 5 questions for you. I've got 5 questions for you. I've got 5 questions for you. Boop, 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 boodly-doo. I've got 5 questions for you. I've got 5 questions for you. I've got 5 questions for you. Boop, 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 boodly-doo.
All right. That's our first.
That's our new intro.
Yep.
That's brand new.
Oh, that's nuts.
We unveiled that.
Jason has never heard that. I just showed James earlier.
I'm
Did it
impressed.
change your life, Jason?
I'm impressed.
All right.
I'm impressed. I'm gonna make up my own jingle for something next week.
We can do it.
We
ready?
got 6 or 8
Before we start the questions, I just want to thank you for your time, Joe. Thanks for coming up.
Yeah, my pleasure,
Yes,
guys.
thank you very much.
I definitely got something from it, and I
Yeah,
hope some of
that's
our
great.
listeners did too.
One question before we get into this, real quick.
Okay.
Somebody who's flirting with the idea of becoming a believer.
Yep.
What if somebody? I don't know if you know this, but millions listen to this.
7.
If somebody is listening to this,
Podcast in general.
yeah, podcast in general, if somebody's listening to this and they're kind of been flirting with the idea of what would you tell them to do?
First thing, read the Gospel of Mark.
Okay.
I think that's the best place to start to give you an idea, first of all, of who Jesus Christ was and is.
Okay.
And why he made the impact he did with the message that he had, and bringing the gospel of love of God to people in the way that he did, and confirms him as the Son of God. It's short, it's easy to read.
Yeah.
And,
Not a lot of baguettes.
Yeah. Stay away from the King James version if you've not really picked up a Bible. There's plenty of more common language Bibles. Easy. The Message is a good place to start for just getting into it for the first time around.
So read
Not a
Mark
bad
and then go see
paraphrase.
Pastor Joe at the United Methodist
Yeah,
Church.
that's right.
Have a chat.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. This is going to be a good one. If you could have a song played every time you walk into a room, what would it be?
Okay. A song.
Jesus is all right with
Or
me.
what if it was like Ozzy or something? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, a
Crazy
song.
Train.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, we're starting to hear Christmas music and stuff right now. Right, all I can think of right now is Porky Pig's version of Blue Christmas, but that's not necessarily all the time.
Blue, blue.
Yeah,
blue,
if I had
blue.
a theme song, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. A theme song.
I've never thought about a theme song per se.
You should think about that. But we'll come
okay,
back to that.
No. Oh,
Got it.
overture to the overture to Magnificent Seven.
Oh,
very cool.
Man, I was going to say hit the fancy button because he said the word overture.
Oh yeah.
But Magnificent Seven,
That
that's
means
a good
the
one.
start.
Yeah. We were. All right.
My
Jason,
turn?
go. Go for it.
I got two good ones here. All right, let's see here. If you could find out the absolute truth to one question, what would it be?
Aliens. I'm not saying it's aliens, but
It's,
it's aliens.
it's in the book.
What's
Yeah,
that
it's in the book.
one burning question?
One burning question. The one burning question.
I liked Jamie from Whiskey Myers. His answer.
What was his answer?
What on earth is hidden, like in the Marianas
Ah,
Trench, and just what are stuff we haven't discovered yet? I thought that was a real interesting
Mhm.
take.
Sure.
Oceanic things.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on Oak Island. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. What? Yeah.
it's going to be a sign saying "psych." No, yeah. Well, I kind of have a list of what I call when I get there questions.
Of course.
You know,
Yeah.
When I get to heaven, I'm going to ask God these questions. Way up on the list, this kind of the
Yours
answer
differs from mine, I'm sure.
is why fire ants.
Yeah.
I said that
Yeah.
the other day.
Yeah.
Very well.
Yeah.
I like it.
It's got
I
me.
got chewed up the other day,
Or
and
chiggers.
That's
Yeah.
a- that- that's-
What purpose do they have?
That's the perfect answer.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a very good one.
That is. I would like to know the absolute truth about that.
I always said I think it'd be great in the afterlife. You get statistics to anything you want in your life.
how many
You know,
times
you know,
stood
you know how
line.
many pounds of food you've eaten. You know, any ridiculous statistic. I think would be fantastic.
And you know, that's a question 83% of the people in the world have.
Yeah.
It's a
Well,
stat guy. I like him.
What if you get up there and you say why fire ants, and he's like, well, actually, it is what binds all of creation together. You know, you're like,
Right.
whoa, okay.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
I saw a meme
That's
the other
cool.
day that said, "What if vegetables are just or plants are just waiting for us to die, decompose, so they can eat us?"
They
I
are.
was like, "That's a good
Yeah.
point."
Mushrooms.
Yep.
Yeah. Lichen.
Okay, so besides children and marriage, what is your proudest moment?
Besides children and marriage, what is my proudest moment?
I like that one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Ooh.
That's a thinker.
Yeah. Well, you're always at risk of alienating someone in your life.
We like to put
It's
people on
gonna
the
start
spot here.
Sorry,
fights.
Mom.
Yeah.
It'll start fights.
Yeah.
Graduating from Course of Study School in 2007.
Awesome. Cool. Good one.
Very good. I have another good one. This one comes up pretty regular here on the show. What is your first memory of Leonard,
There you
Texas?
go.
Oh, my first memory of Leonard, Texas.
Had you been here before?
No,
Okay.
no. I'd never been to Leonard.
You didn't come try it before you buy it?
No. We knew we were coming before. I mean, we knew we were coming, so we came and just kind of
Sure.
around town. Well, okay. Say it again. What exactly?
Your very first memory of Leonard, Texas.
The square.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
The
good.
brick
that comes
the-
up a lot.
The brick streets going
The
around the
world
square.
famous Leonard Square.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. How quiet it was, and it wasn't that late at night.
It was-
Yeah.
It
was
4:30
4
in the
p.m.
afternoon. Yeah.
Yeah, almost. Yeah. The town square.
Cool.
Home of the
It's pretty common.
12 o'clock Sirens Global Headquarters.
As it happens
Yep,
to be.
that's
true.
right.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right.
For now, until we get kicked out.
That's true. Now, Matthew's finally just going
So
to need
Matthew
the space.
decides you.
Yeah.
We just added the couches today. I don't know if you
Yeah,
noticed.
this is new. Actually.
This is our new setup over here.
Okay.
So last question. I think this is a good one for a man of your background. If you could have lunch with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
John Wayne.
John
Ooh.
Wayne. That's a strong move. I like that. I
He
wish
did
Garrett
not
was here.
hesitate.
No,
Not at
he
all.
put
That's
some thought
quick.
into this.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah.
What would you ask the Duke?
There's so many.
Yeah,
Or what
I
would you
was
tell
gonna
him?
say,
Is there
yeah,
anything
yeah,
you'd
yeah.
like to
What
tell
would
him?
you tell him?
Gosh. Yeah.
Did you accept
I
Jesus
would-
Christ as your Lord and
Yeah.
Savior?
Yeah. How close? Yeah.
Yeah.
How?
What's your
how- what was
relationship?
what was your faith like for
Yeah.
you? Yeah.
Listen
I'd-
here, Pilgrim.
I'd exactly. Yeah. We'll all go around the
Sorry,
table
that's
here
probably
with our John
terrible.
Wayne
That's all right.
impersonations.
I'm sure that was awful.
No, I would want to know. I would want to know what it was like to work with John Ford and Maureen O'Hara.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maureen O'Hara, was that in The Quiet Man? Yeah.
5 movies together, and you could see that chemistry.
Yeah.
like very few Hollywood
Sure.
Maureen
acting
O'Hare.
couples. Maureen O'Hara.
Maureen O'Hara.
Maureen
Oh.
O'Hara.
Him.
Quiet Man, McClintock, a couple of them.
Why wouldn't you have lunch with him?
Maureen O'Hara?
No,
And-
her.
Her. So I just
Yeah.
blew that. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I was gonna say have lunch with her and ask how John Wayne was.
well, that's
That's
interesting
interesting approach.
That'd be rude. I think that'd be rude. So tell me
Yeah,
what it
I
was
get
like
it.
to work with John Wayne.
Yeah.
If you could
That's
only,
true.
I'm going to throw a bonus question. If you could only watch one John Wayne movie for the rest of your life, which one?
Oh,
Sunday afternoons after you retire the robes.
well, yeah. Kathy and I love McClintock. About this time of year, we start getting a real burn to watch The Quiet Man or
Yep.
Donovan's Reef, which is a Christmas movie nobody knows about. So, but yeah, Donovan's Reef.
Die Hard, was it a Christmas movie or not?
No.
It was a
No.
Christmas movie. It's one of the best ones out there. Come on. I think that's like
Dumb delightful, but not
yeah, that's I think that's one of the chili with beans or no beans things. You know,
That's
you got
right,
one
that's right.
persuasion or the other.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Well, Pastor Joe, thanks for your time. We
Thanks,
appreciate
guys.
it.
We really
Yeah.
appreciate
Gonna
it.
suggest you
Yes.
want to take us out with a prayer or possibly a favorite passage or any
Could you
last
bless
words.
the 12 o'clock siren for us?
Yeah.
Let's do
Would
that.
you-
Yeah,
would you
well,
please?
let's close with prayer.
Sure.
For all that you give us, O God, and a community in which to live and to laugh and to love each other, we give you thanks. We thank you for these guys around the table and for what they're bringing to the community. Well, we pray that your love goes out to those listening and to especially the families and the folks in our community of Leonard. As we pray in Jesus' name, Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Pastor Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome, guys.